welcome to yet another awesome episode of Living It Up in Lion City. I forgot what I wanted to say.
We are about to do a podcast.
You also haven't done this in quite some time, have you?
Yeah, it's been a while. Kind of like going through content that I recorded like months ago. So
I know.
Yeah, I took a break in between. But yeah, okay. So, hello, welcome to yet another awesome episode of Living Up in Lion City. With me here are two friends who are going to talk about the metal scene in Singapore. Hi, Tomas.
Hi, how's it going, boys?
Welcome for the third time, I think.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Michele.
Hey, how are you doing?
Yeah. So we've been trying to record this for a couple of times over the last couple of months. And
No, we've been meaning to record this for the last couple of years. Yeah, we got together to finally do it about a year ago, and here we are.
And then, COVID happened.
Yeah.
So, once again, thanks, guys, for coming. So, what I wanted to understand about the metal scene was that let's set some background. I've been a casual fan of metal music. I do enjoy the random metal song and stuff like that, and especially coming from India, which has a fairly big metal scene, at least in Bangalore, where I used to live in. It is just something that everybody loved. There was always a metal gig happening every other week, and it was fairly popular, especially among the young, yuppie crowd, I would say. Since moving to Singapore, I've seen there's a distinct lack of the metal scene. What are your guys' takes on it?
Yeah, I'm coming from Czech Republic, and I have the same experience. And it's a well-developed underground culture, or like counter mainstream culture.
Uh-huh.
And coming to Singapore, find the lack of it disturbing across all levels, just not metal. But the metal is the one I'm most versed in, so I guess I'm at least somewhat qualified to talk about it.
Okay. Michele, what's
Yeah, it's very small. Interestingly, it's mostly working class, I would say. You said that in India it's more like a yuppie community?
I would say that in Bangalore, I think metal is popular across a large section of society. I would say that a lot of metal bands started off as raging against the system, right? So there was a lot of all the songs had political messages to it. It was all about fuck the system. It was all about that anti-establishment bent, and then over time that became super popular, and then it started becoming, for the lack of a better word, it was being co-opted by the younger, richer crowd who could go to these concerts,
right.
And it was kind of considered cool to wear a metal T-shirt and say that I'm part of.
Is that
crowd.
something like you got the fashion icons and like Kardashians or that crowd wearing like Iron Maiden Metallica T-shirt with like $10,000 Gucci gear?
Yeah, it would be close to that. I mean,
Yeah,
India, so
that's
maybe
weird stuff, man.
But yeah. No, but that was. I mean, the start has always been one of anti-establishment, and then over time, like with anything that's popular, a lot of people want to be associated with it. And I dare say that, once again, as someone who has worked in the tech industry over there, it was kind of like, hey, I'm more than just someone working in tech. I'm an anti-establishment, metalhead. So there was that thing too. So
for sure.
It was very much tied to going against the grain and stuff like that. And whereas in Singapore, I find, okay, that's.
Well, I guess that's what attracts people into metal more or less everywhere, at least when they start listening to it. So the rebellion, the anti-establishment.
Yeah. It's like my question I wanted to ask you guys. Like, how did you find metal? Like, what was your first experience? How you got into it? It was like, for me, it was like partially I just liked the music when I first time heard like distorted guitar riffs and double kick bass on drums. Just like, it's energizing me, like I'm Duracell bunny.
Yeah.
Keep me energized. But at the same time, I enjoyed like the anti-mainstream. I'm going against the grain, against the crowd. But I was like 16 or 15.
Yeah.
So we are at that age.
Yeah.
So that goes with the anti-establishment message pretty well.
For me, I think how I discovered metal was, I think this was around 2003 or 2004. Like back in the day, of course, computers still had floppy disks and stuff like that. So there was this guy who had a hard disk full of music, and he would go around, so, we would invite him to our homes and stuff like that, and he would like fix that hard disk onto our computers, and he had like a whole bunch of songs, and because of which literally everyone in our uni had the same collection of music, because he was the guy. Like, so admittedly at the time, it music distribution, especially for international music in India, wasn't that, let's say, popular. And of course, it's always been dominated by Bollywood and film music in India. So like for us, that was our exposure to English music, international music, and subsequently metal. So yes, it was that hard disk by that one guy. Yeah. Props to you, Sajeesh.
Yeah, trading tapes, man. Back in the day, I kind of miss that, like tapes or CDs, or you got the MP3 players. When it started, like we were trading that instead of the hard drives.
Yeah,
it's like you could put more music in it, and you could like upload to it and delete from it. Whereas when you like burn out the CD, that's it, you are done.
Yeah.
Even if it was like data instead of music, so you could
Well, that's the cool way of getting into metal, exchanging cassettes.
Yeah. But you actually had to know people.
Yeah, I didn't, and the way I started was a lot more lame. In the late 90s. MTV still had some heavy music, and if you like it, you start just digging a bit more into it. And then after MTV, Napster came along,
yes,
and you could look for those songs and listen to them over again and find some more, and then just slowly find new music. So that's more or less how I started listening.
Yeah, it was actually similar for me. It wasn't MTV, it was Viva, which was like German MTV.
Oh, we also had Viva.
Yeah.
Both. So when you watch MTV, and when they were playing that Britney Spears songs for the fourth time, you just zap over to Viva, and then you go back when you don't like the song, and it's keep going back and forth for the whole day.
Yeah, but my like first interaction was just the older guys in the locker room when I was playing hockey. Just like I start playing with the older guys and just blasting. I think it was Limp Bizkit and like other Slipknot, like new metal. I'm that age, the 90s kid, early 2000s.
Late 90s.
So,
99, 2000.
Korn.
There was, I think one of the first earlier songs that I remember, there was Papa Roach, but would that be considered metal?
Which one?
Papa Roach?
This
is my last resort.
New metal, it's from that time. Yeah.
That was super popular. Like, we used to play that music, for the university annual day and stuff like that. And that was like the sign of rebellion, because you have like the regular regional music that you play, as background for all of the programs happening. And then someone would sneak this in, and we'd be like, this is the last resort. So, I mean, so in that way, like, that's how metal has been for us. It's like, hey, fuck the system. And that's how it was.
Yeah.
But then I dare say, like in Slovakia and in Italy, the metal scene has it's been fairly entrenched for decades, right?
Yeah.
To say so. I mean, it kind of grew with the whole Western music scene, at least English language music is fairly connected.
Right.
Simply, I guess, because of the fact that bands tour all those countries.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just part of the economics of gigging. You go to Europe and you stop in every capital because you can just drive over in a van, and everywhere you go, you're gonna find 200-300 people are willing to go, and it just feeds into the movement. And I guess that's the main challenge here in Singapore. That if you want to put Singapore on a tour, well, you have to fly in and fly out. It's not the same cost as driving in and driving out into a city. So gigs are very
Asian
expensive.
tour is like expensive.
Exactly, gigs are very, very expensive, and it's a bit unfortunate what happened with COVID, because I think in the last couple of years, even 3 years, you were starting to have big metal acts who were putting Singapore on the map. In the past, they would either tour Japan and then go to Australia, but now Singapore was starting to become the mandatory stop in between. They toured Japan, they go up to Singapore, and it was never a very large crowd. I mean, let's say for a big metal band, you can get maybe, forget about Metallica, but for
those are really big.
Yeah, those are not even, normal bands anymore. But you take a band that would get maybe 500-600 in Europe, will get 100 here, 100 people.
Yeah, like Aura Noir had like 20 people, and they were all from Malaysia.
No, but I'm talking, when we went to see Opeth, for example.
Oh, yeah.
And that was crowded because they had to cancel the Hong Kong gig, so you had all the Hong Kong crowd coming in, plus the Singapore crowd.
Yeah,
and there must have been
there's a lot of Aussies living here.
But still less than 200 people.
Yeah.
And Opeth can pack 1,000 easily in Europe.
Yeah, for sure.
But Opeth is a very big band. I wouldn't call that like underground or anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That kind of band can get at most, let's say, 200 here, which is still, it came a long way. It wasn't always like that.
But you know what's attracting a lot of people? He acts like baby metal, like this stuff from Japan. And was the other one, Love Bites. It's like ladies playing like thrash power metal. And they just get like this weird crowd similar to baby metal. I guess if you like baby metal, it's similar, so you know both of them. And I just discovered this band by accident recently when we were like a couple months ago, and apparently they play in Singapore already, just pre-COVID.
They opened for Judas Priest.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Here?
I remember because it was my birthday last year. I didn't go. I had other things to do. Never been a big fan of Judas Priest. I saw them once, but yeah, it was last year.
So, I mean, for those who don't know, like, what exactly is baby metal?
Oh, man.
Because all I know is, like, girls dressed in, frilly clothes.
The problem is that how can we explain this in a way that,
Like,
still
if you know
allows you to publish your podcast without too many restrictions?
It's basically like...
I'll put the explicit tag.
I put some, like, effort into this. I like underground music, extreme music, like the noise grindcore, porno grind, that kind of stuff. And Japan was always like where this kind of culture thrived. And also in Japan, what they have is like very obscure, hidden underworld of the pop idol groups. Like you got the big ones, the AKB48 or something. And also you got the underground ones with like, they have like dedicated 100, 200 fans and they buy all their merch, and that's basically how they like stay alive business-wise. So this was this one guy, and they tried different combinations of everything. And this one guy who came up with baby metal, he just struck gold. Like he just like playing with different formulas. It's like, okay, let's try like, thrash death metal riffs with, 3 girls singing just J-pop to it basically, and it worked. People loved it, and they put a lot of production to it from the beginning, so it like gained traction through that, and it's just crazy big ass group right now.
And I also feel that like especially in Singapore there is a love for everything Japanese, like so there's like a strong affinity for a lot of Japanese culture and stuff like that, so maybe that also played a part.
For sure.
So I don't know, I was just introduced to baby metal like at your home and you showed a couple of videos and I'm like nice.
For me it's not something I would listen to like as my jam, but if they play here in Singapore again, I want to see the show live, because apparently the show is fucking amazing. So like the amazing spectacle, and like the music is not offensive to me, it's just not like something I would like play on my day off or something. So
you're saying that, I mean, are you saying that like spectacle is a big part of baby metal, and by extension is spectacle a big part of metal?
Yeah, like the metal fans or some groups even, they would they hate when like they have like pop groups or other genres music is like, yeah, it's all gimmick and bullshit. But I think metal is like most gimmicky genre of them all. Especially if you go to like black metal, you have to war paint and like dead goat heads on stakes and reverse crossed and flame shows and whatnot. Those are the gigs that attract the most crowd, or like the largest crowds. So like it's just like big hypocrisy. It's like, no, it's not music, it's just all fucking gimmick. K-pop, man, it's just like they look fake, they faked it and whatnot. It's just like, look what you are listening to, man. It's like fucking bloody goat head on a stage.
Yeah, but I mean, at least all the props and gimmicks they're using are kind of, is it tied to the message? They're tied to the anti-establishment, anti-religion, anti-politics.
No, they just want to be cool, but they don't want to be cool as
it's kind of an aesthetic that evolved and then kind of became associated with a certain part of metal. Like you said, in black metal, you will have dead goats on stage and crosses upside down, and that's just part of black metal. And not everybody does it. Not everyone does it. Some people don't do it because they don't care. Some people don't do it because they cannot afford it, but they wish they did it. And it's not, again, a mandatory thing. Tons of bands have literally zero props. But yeah, it's definitely part of the, the album cover artwork, the posters when you go to the gigs, the merchandising, the T-shirts they sell, and all of that.
The fonts even, there's a specific fonts that's being used. that's kind of the casual understanding of metal in Singapore and in general. So it's like metal is like, oh, this is, anti Christian or anti-religion. It's, satanic and all that stuff. And I think what we saw last year when Watain was cancelled, it was essentially like, feeding into like the idea that was being put forth was that, this is like a satanic band. And I think I keep forgetting what were the details of it. Was it because it was a metal band, or was it because they actually did some bullshit?
No, I mean, Watain is notorious in the scene for overplaying this card.
Right.
And they sort of made their name in the scene by overplaying the outrage card with religious people. And
they look for controversy. That's their marketing.
They kind of look for it. So I don't think Watain is a good example, because there are not many bands like that who do it in a way that is calculated.
Okay. And
we probably don't even believe in it, but they do it to get a little bit more fame, and it's kind of clickbaiting people into the band. So in that particular case, I think it was the band who actively looks for that kind of reaction.
Right.
And I mean, in Singapore, they got cancelled. They were probably not happy about it, but they get cancelled several times a year, and that's part of their thing, and it makes them look even more edgy because, hey, we got cancelled, and then more kids listen to them.
In Europe. We got cancelled in Singapore. Come to see us in London.
I mean, that's a great marketing shtick.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
But here's the thing, though.
But that's how, for example, I would say from at least many people I know in the scene, have no respect for them, because it's not something I would say that's common in the metal scene. Some people do it, but with a bit more tact. Like, they're kind of on the edge. Yeah, they're overplaying it, but still, there is still such thing as, having a little bit of consistency and trying to stay true to what you're trying to tell with the music and with the lyrics, whatever you can understand of the lyrics, and not just package it as a product and sell outrage. That's not something that's very common.
So about Watain, what was interesting for me was that, a lot of local metal bands, came out and they were, in support of Watain and generally, shitting on the person who started the petition. So what I then realized was that, so there are a ton of metal bands in Singapore, which is something that I didn't know, right? So it took this controversy for me to go like, okay, that was a thing. Because I kind of always thought that metal was non-existent here, but then
but of course, because from their perspective, no matter, it's not about Watain, it's about they realize that the Singapore government doesn't know why Watain pulls these kind of marketing tricks, but the result for the bands here is that they will get fewer places to play. It's going to be harder for them to book gigs, and it's just going to affect the scene. So it's not about Watain itself. It's like, I'm trying to grow the scene here, and suddenly these fuckers are coming along and getting cancelled, which means that next time, every time a local band starts playing, then any kind of religious zealot can just stand up and say, hey, I don't want them to play. So it kind of creates a precedence case, right?
I see it as a double-edged sword. Like, what do you say? I agree with. But on the other hand, when you have like edgy kids who are like, hey, I don't want to be, mainstream or whatever. This is kind of, thing I'm looking for. Let's let me look into it and listen to some metal bands from here in Singapore.
They might have
some
fans. You might get more fans from. So basically, by talking about it, on one side you get more fans, but on the other side you have the legitimate concern of what these guys are screwing up the scene.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm suppose that's why bands sort of rallied again around this cause. I don't think anybody really wants to defend Watain in the metal scene. Nobody cares about them.
I didn't think of that angle.
But I guess it's about the maturity of the scene. Like, people in Europe or in US, in the West in general, are used to this kind of stuff, and like the general public just doesn't care anymore, because they know it's like the video games. They already know, like, playing Doom or killing people in GTA just don't make you serial killer. Same with the music. Whereas here in Singapore, it's like new and like looks evil, and we don't really know much about it. So let's be more careful how we approach this. And Singapore is notorious to just like straight out ban everything they don't know. So
yeah, I mean that's probably it's like preemptive banning, but it's like the authorities here especially take a pretty hardline stance when it comes to sensitive messaging, especially with regards to religion.
Abundance of caution.
But honestly, if you go to those gigs, you can't understand what they say anyway. So it's really because Watain makes sure that the names of their songs are particularly outrageous, and that probably because what they have to do, so bands coming into Singapore, they have to submit their set list to the regulator.
Okay.
And all the songs and the lyrics are submitted through to the regulator, who says, okay, you cannot play this particular song, and you have to skip it from the song. And there's always a negotiation, and it doesn't have to be, you know, black metal. There's even very you take any kind of mainstream pop singer, if they have a song that is leans a bit too much towards homosexuality, for example, they might not be allowed to play it in Singapore. And that's a very common thing. Now, of course, if you read Watain's lyrics, it's pretty clear that they would get through. But it is a broader situation in the music industry, and not only in Singapore, but in the majority of countries in the world.
Yeah, like US went through this phase like decades ago. That's the parental advisory thingy that happened because of metal in the 90s or 80s even.
Wasn't that what happened in Norway too? The documentary that we watched was essentially about that, right? Like,
yeah, but that was extreme. It was just like fairly small group of people going insane, but it was fairly isolated. Like nowhere else in the world, nor even in Norway itself, no one really followed up on like burning churches and murdering each other. There was just like group of people who like hyped each other, unsupervised, teenage angst that like derailed to complete extreme. It's like unique situation. It's cool story. People are like, yeah, you know, it's funny, black metal, yeah, worship the devil, but no one really wants to kill their friend or burn a church.
Yeah, that's fair. But like, since we're talking about, you know, a certain moral angle that discourages the metal scene in Singapore, it's very different in, let's say, Malaysia or Indonesia.
Yeah,
so
of course.
I'm just curious to understand why.
Yeah, like the difference I would say is the religion, or like the how seriously the religion is being taken in Malaysia, for example, or even here in Singapore, as opposed to Europe. Europe is very liberal in that sense. Like it's very secular, whereas, you know, Malaysia, you got the religious police and stuff like that. So I imagine that plays major role in how it's black metal or music like that or entertainment like that perceived by general public or
but at the same
governments.
time, like metal is super popular in Malaysia and Indonesia, right? At least.
Well, Indonesia is
brutal death metal.
It's unbelievable
scene, yeah.
because it's like a nation of metalheads. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but it's absolutely massive. You go to the same band playing here and in Jakarta. They play here 100 people. They play there freaking 40,000.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like you got YouTube videos. Like was one girl. She's a teenager. She's like 14 years old. She got the hijab and, you know, from a countryside in Indonesia, and she's playing Slayer riffs on guitar and crushing it, and just smiling and just being happy in general. It's weird sight, like from a Western point of view. You got this distorted image from media, like Muslims hate everything that's not Muslim, right?
No,
which is absolutely not true, of course.
A few years ago in Jakarta, and Mayhem were playing on stage, and everybody was wearing hijab, and you had the mosque, and then the prayer room just next door, and Mayhem on stage.
And everyone is completely chill, which is interesting and awesome. That's how it should be.
So the music that's the metal music in Indonesia.
But interesting, I would add something about you say, yes, Malaysia and Indonesia fairly restrictive in religion, but metal mostly goes against Christianity, not against Islam. So it doesn't really get through.
That's a fair point.
For them.
Yeah.
Whereas in Singapore, there's a pretty large and influential Christian community. It's offended. In Malaysia and Indonesia, nobody cares what the Christians have to say. And there's no anti-Islam. I mean, there are some underground bands, of course, you know, but by and large, any kind of such rebellion in metal is against Christianism, because that's you know, where.
But even
where it
like
comes from.
in Europe, the message of these bands usually is not like against Christians or Christianity in terms of you know, just destroy everything, but historically church did a lot of nasty things, and the way they got control over the Europe was through just fear mongering, and they became insanely rich and powerful through that. And like this is just like basically modern follow-up, just like, you know, be secular, do whatever you want, don't let anyone else telling you what to do. You are a free man. Just if you want to do that and someone else is telling you like you shouldn't, you should follow something else, just do what you want.
So if that's the origin of it, I would wager and say that it's not necessarily anti-religion, it's more anti-political overbearing religion. Like,
yeah, because in some parts of Europe, the religion still has pretty strong influence on the communities.
yeah.
So that's like the main. I think the best band in this is probably Behemoth. Behemoth. I'm not sure how to pronounce it in English, but they started as similar to Wete, just like stirring controversy everywhere. But they are now in their 40s, and chill out. Their whole music and music videos and everything now it's about a message, because Poland is like very Christian country,
Right.
and like traditionalist, and just like follow the rules, follow the church, follow whatever the man on Sunday tells you in the church. So it's like, hey, you don't have to listen to everything. Like, you can still, like, if you are Christian, just think about what they say. Just make up your own mind. Don't just blindly follow everything.
Well, there is a notion in many places in Europe that
critical thinking, that's
Christianism
the
and
term I'm looking for.
conservatism are very closely aligned. In many countries, even the political parties, the conservative parties, are the Christian parties, and vice versa. So it comes from, I guess, from that association. A bit less today than it used to be, but it was like that for a long time.
Critical thinking, that's the term I was looking for.
So, like, I want to explore that political angle just a bit. So earlier I mentioned that in India, a lot of the metal bands started it was political angst essentially. It was outraged against what is happening in the country, raging against the system. And I wonder if the popularity of metal music is somehow related to dissatisfaction with, let's say, the state of things in the country. And I guess what I'm trying to go with is that, is it because, like in Singapore, where there isn't generally that level of strife, or that level of, let's say, dissatisfaction with the powers that be, could that be why metal doesn't really have that kind of appeal?
I think the main, or like one of the main ingredients for counterculture and underground to thrive is general public not being happy how things are being done and how their country is doing. And I think from 5 years in Singapore, the general public, despite complaining all the time on various topics, they are generally happy, because they know they have pretty comfortable living here, even though they are not like super rich and have their own landed house in Sentosa. They still everyone makes pretty good living, and they are secure. They have the security, like, this is going to be like this. They know what's going to happen. Whereas I come from, Czech Republic used to be Czechoslovakia, part of Soviet Union, and until the fall of Iron Curtain, there was no counterculture or underground, and people were very upset. But if they catch you with a tape from with Metallica or a band like that, you just get your ass in jail right away.
Shit. Okay.
So after the fall of the Iron Curtain, like, this music just flooded it, and like the 90s and early 2000s. Because it's not like that, there is no communism. We are now a capitalist country and we are as prosperous as US or Germany. That doesn't happen. It took like 20 or 30 years to get where the country is now. And it was a lot of turmoil and people were disillusioned and whatnot. So that's why it thrived. And I think it's for the whole former Soviet bloc. It's like that. That's why there's like a lot of extreme bands and like extreme fans as well, because they're just not happy with how things turned out after the revolutions.
Interesting.
So that means that with COVID, we should hope for more metal?
Probably, maybe, yeah.
Layoffs, economic crisis, people losing their...
It's like, as long as you are happy with how everything works, you just follow the flow, you go with the flow, and everyone is, I don't know, J-pop, K-pop, Chinese pop here is the most mainstream stuff. So it's like, I want to be like everyone else. Everyone else is doing well. I want to do as well as everyone else. But if everything from your point of view sucks, you don't want to be like everyone else. You start looking for alternatives, and chances are you might
start raging and go
you might end up with, exactly, worshipping devil and mosh pitting angry like Friday, Saturday nights.
So one of my favorite depictions of disillusionment is actually this Netflix show called Agretsuko. Have you guys seen
Oh
it?
yeah, I
No.
saw that. It's funny.
What is it?
So Agretsuko, it's actually made by the same guys who did Hello Kitty, right? So it's once again it's animated, very cutesy, animal characters. It's about this very young millennial red panda who goes to work, who hates her job, hates her life. She gets fucked over, by her colleagues. Her love life sucks.
Boss is literal pig.
Yeah. And then her only respite was to lock herself in a karaoke room and just scream, It's fucking awesome, And so that's what got me thinking. I'm like, okay, so disillusionment does play a part. It's really great, and it really encapsulates like modern disillusionment among young millennials and stuff like that. Do watch it. I know it looks super cutesy and it's so good.
I'll check it out.
There is death metal music and addresses like social issues
So like there was
of growing up,
I'll check it
adulting.
out.
Yeah. There was one episode where she was so this red panda was like, oh shit, the only way that I can stop dealing with work is if I find a husband, and then I can just stop working and live in matrimonial bliss and all that. And then she goes to her into the toilet, pulls out a portable mic, and goes, "Matrimonial freedom."
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Do watch it. But yeah, that's kind of what got me thinking. It's like, okay, so that does play a part. And
for sure, it plays the part. Like if you have angst, like, okay, I was promised to, I'm 25, I was promised to get a good job by now because I got good education. Everyone told me when I finish university, I get my degree, I will get a good paying job and get myself a wife or a husband and start a family. I will be happy. But you are in debt because you can't even afford a car. You cannot afford a house in a city. You have to live either outside the city, or in Singapore it's not even an option, of course. And it's not what they promised you. So you are disappointed, upset maybe, and you need an outlet. Everyone
there
has
is
their
also
own.
a thing that the general attitude,
Yeah.
and at least I see many people being taught to behave, which is if you have something to be upset about, it's always your own fault.
okay.
I mean, you do Singaporeans is like, yeah, you can't afford a house, you can't afford a car. Well, that's because you don't work too hard enough. And certainly don't blame anyone above you because they've done everything they can for you. And it sounds a bit like an exaggeration, but it happened to me more than a few times to talk to people and say, hey, this is kind of shitty. Aren't you angry about it? No, but it's still better than Malaysia. And there is this kind of acceptation of certain things that I think prevents a certain reaction from coming out. And that reaction is what then, triggers things like people joining a biker's gang or, a metal band or stuff like that.
No, I mean, you actually make a really good point. So there's a lot of top-down messaging that generally, is of the nature that, hey, we are doing everything for you. Like, what do you have to, complain about? And if there's anything happening,
and it
could be because
it's a message that is generally pretty well received, and not necessarily for bad reasons, but because of that, I feel that there are very few occasions where, probably the only thing that could start a big metal scene here is, maybe some good xenophobia or stuff like that. That will get people pissed off enough to join a metal band.
That would make it for a great metal band song. Get the fuck out! Oh my gosh! But speaking of like the metal scene in the COVID times,
there has to be a strong sentiment somewhere. Whether it's that you're unhappy with the kind of life that is prospective to you, whether it's because you're unhappy that your life is going to be, get a mortgage, pay your CPF and pay insurance for the rest of your life, or you're unhappy that you would love to do this and that in life, but it's basically people who feel sometimes constrained or different and find comfort in joining a community, a subculture that of like-minded people. That's what it is.
That's one thing I think it's what keeps people in metal or other subgenres apart from mainstream is the tribalism. When you like find your own crowd.
That's why they all wear the same clothes.
Yeah,
they go to the same gigs,
and that's why
go
they
to
like
the same
the
pubs.
gimmicks and symbols. Like the when we were talking about the black metal and burning churches, it's like no, I don't care about that, but I like that, you know, when I see some other guy who's like pentagram or like, you know, goat's head on their t-shirt, I know what he's about, and we can start chatting immediately. We have something in common, and you can tell just like from seeing them from far apart, and that's what's attractive to people, because like, hey, he's my king.
Yeah, it's a tribe, it's a community.
Yeah.
It's safer and healthier than joining a church.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Fair point.
And yeah, and on the other hand, then like, you know, when you have prosperous mainstream and no one has really something to complain about, like very depth or be upset about, they just want to go with the flow.
So now I'm curious, like the metal bands here in Singapore, like do they have a particular theme about their songs? Like, what do they generally rage against?
I know only some grindcore bands. This Warmer Out, they are like now international popular band.
They're probably the biggest band in
most
Singapore.
successful one. Yeah, from what I gathered is just they genuinely just like the music, just like, you know, distorted guitars and making the music. They don't really have message per se, but I could be wrong, of course.
Okay. Because like the popular conception of metal is that there's always like a message, and of course it's associated, you know, not with church burning generally, but it's like, oh, you know, anti-Christ, anti-whatever, and stuff like that.
Generally speaking, most popular kind of metal is power metal, and which is just dragons, Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy, and like old, you know, Viking stuff, that kind of stuff. So there's like no message whatsoever. They just want to make song with like nice chants. So when you go to like Wacken Festival, it's like 30,000 people chanting the same stuff with the guys on the stage, and everyone is having a great time, or like dress up in like medieval costumes, whatnot.
Most people I know don't care about the lyrics.
Yeah,
like they generally don't.
They just want to be with
and even more than that,
people.
They sometimes because sometimes you might disagree with the lyrics, and I've had this debate many times with friends, particularly, you know, when you get into extreme metal and some very controversial lyrics. And there's also the question of, you know, will you listen to the band if you completely disagree with what they have to say? Either because they're Nazis, or, you know, or because you might be a religious person and they might go against, you know, what your beliefs. And I mean, usually people are like, yeah, I mean, I like the music, I would just ignore what they say.
But is it the case nowadays, though? Because I just feel that any music that you listen to, somehow, if it has a message that's against your beliefs and all that, it's really hard to, okay, maybe not personally, but it's like, so for example, not metal related, but recently, especially with all the white supremacy stuff that's been going on recently, they've kind of co-opted a particular genre of, you know, that EDM. I think it's retro wave or something like that. So it's called fash wave, like fascism wave. And so it became a problem because the folks who loved that kind of music are like, fuck, we don't want to be associated with any music that subscribes or is, you know, popular among a particular, you know, hateful group or whatever, right, you know. Right. So and I think a lot of bands right now, you know, have to deal with that. So I don't think we're in a situation where we can say that, hey, I like this Nazi band for the music.
Actually, there is such thing as National Socialist black metal.
Okay.
Similar stuff.
Yeah, it came to my mind as well.
Big up to my mates who are going to be listening to the podcast. They will know who they are.
Shit. Okay.
And because I had this discussion with them, and all of them were like, yeah, I like the music. I'm just going to ignore. It's easier to ignore what they have to say because, again, they're screaming, growling. Unless if you didn't pay attention, you're not actually going to.
Have you been ever called out for listening to NS black metal without like even knowing it? It's like someone told you, hey, why are you listening to this? They're fucking Nazis.
I mean, I don't normally listen to people around, you know.
I was like, when I was in my black metal heyday, I just like, and like it was early stages of internet getting music. You just like, hey, there is another black metal band. You don't really have like much information about them, so you're just listening to it, and you try to, you know, give it to other people and spread the word. Like, no, man, they are Nazis. And it's like, oh shit, I didn't know. Okay, scratch this one.
The only kind of embarrassing situation you might be in is that you buy a CD from, I don't know, Impaled Nazarene, and your mom finds it.
What's Impaled Nazarene about?
It's a band.
Okay.
And it's just, and the artwork is blasphemous,
Right.
and you will have to justify yourself as a teenager. That's basically it.
Oh yeah, I got issues with my grandparents. Like when I was like 18, I was like I was most heavy into like the devil stuff. So I was wearing, invert crosses and whatnot. And then we went to visit my grandparents in the countryside. They just were not having it. And I was like, this is the problem,
But that's
fucking
also
church
why I
and
guess
fucking system.
you like these things when you're,
But I grew
when you're a
out
teenager
of
because
it,
it sets you apart from it's this thing that it's yours and your family cannot understand. You build your
No,
identity.
Mom, it's
you
not
build
a
your
phase.
tribe. It's all that stuff.
There's that rebellion.
Important. And I guess that in the 90s and even early 2000s, you still have rock music was big enough to give you a smooth transition into metal.
Yeah.
Now it will be much harder because now most of the mainstream music is not rock. It's R&B. It's neo soul. It's even EDM is on the way out at this point.
Mumble rap.
I would say that rap
is trap. So it's a much bigger step to get into metal from there.
Yeah, but I also feel like rap, hip hop, R&B, and all that also have this element of anti-establishment sentiment.
Which makes it even harder for metal to be attractive,
right?
Because you can find
that elsewhere.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I guess those scenes are facing the same situation here. Do you know many hip hop artists who came to Singapore? No, because all the lyrics are censored, because it's expensive to come in. It's very hard for them to tour.
That's a good point, though. Although there is a big local, hip hop scene.
There is.
I'm not into it. I don't know enough about it, but I struggle to think if it has anything to do about political messaging or anything like that. Yeah. So I'd like to talk about the metal scene in Singapore, like at least pre-COVID. Where do you go?
This one plays in the Geylang Industrial Complex next to the Aljunied station.
Okay.
There are two. I guess it used to be just like factory room. There are two I have been to. One was not like metal gig. One was a metal gig, and it seems to be used for like small radar underground acts.
Okay.
And the opet where we were to.
That one is Sled Decline.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of small promoter. They run their own little gig room, and they have some. Well, honestly, what you would consider as pretty large acts. I mean, I saw Benighted there, and Benighted are not a small band. They can easily get 400 or 500 people in, let's say in Prague, I suppose.
Yeah.
There were 70 of us here. They get those kind of people. No, we saw Opeth in a shitty bar in Clarkey, but that was because it was
some kind of improvisation last minute.
Yeah, because they were
right?
supposed to play in Hong Kong. They had, I think, the flight had an issue, and they had to find a last minute gig in Singapore. I can't remember why exactly. So that was a bit different. There are a few. There used to be.
I get used to this.
A few places to see gigs, but there's a few promoters. You have these guys Let Decline. There's Ravage Records, who have a nice shop at Golden Mile, and they're also bringing bands in more into the black metal. They're bringing all the Eastern European bands. They have a pretty strong network there. There's a few others who are working really hard to get the scene going. That these guys more or less. Doing charity, because I don't think they make any money out of it. But they're fighting hard to get the scene going. And you have slightly bigger promoters like LAMC, who brought people like Dream Theater, like Devin Townsend, so bigger acts.
Wow, okay.
But they bring them to places like the Big Box in Jurong,
right?
To slightly larger theaters. So those are LAMC also brought Opeth, a slightly bigger promoter. But there is.
Do you know the guys from band Demisor?
No.
Because when I was getting this cap and I was talking with the Obscene Extreme guys, It's like the grindcore festival in Czech Republic, but it's like the most famous one in the world, and that's how I discovered Wormrod. They were there like 8 years ago.
You had no idea what they were from Singapore, what Singapore was.
Yeah, exactly.
Existed.
But
you're here.
I was talking with Churby, and he's like the guy behind this festival, and I was asking him, hey, you brought in Wormrod from Singapore. Do you know some other guys here? Like, because I still, like I want to meet more people. And he's like, yeah, the guys from the Demisor band, they are the ones basically like behind the scene, the grindcore extreme music in Singapore. But since I don't really function on Facebook, that's where they thrive. I was not able to connect with them, and it was like during COVID as well. So
okay, no, I don't know much about grindcore in general.
I mean to connect with these guys once the COVID is over.
Do it.
Hopefully next year. Right?
Yeah.
2024.
What about that place that we went to near the Esplanade?
The Annex Studio?
Yeah, the Annex Studio.
Well, Annex Studio does a bit of everything.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not especially metal.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think there's like dedicated metal venue here in Singapore.
I've seen a Taiwanese rapper there.
Okay. Oh.
I mean, that's as metal as it gets.
Yeah, because the reason why I asked is that recently on Reddit there was a question about someone wanting to know, like, is there like a metal bar somewhere?
It's the Chips. That's the closest to it, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but then it's generally a bar that plays metal music and not necessarily a place where they host.
It's just a bar.
Gigs.
Yeah, there is no stage. But it's funny because last time when we were there, it's a shame that Bob is not here, because we went there and the way it functions there, they have like iPad with Spotify, and people can come over and put the song in the queue. And we wanted to play, some blast beats and whatnot, something a little heavier. And there was a bunch of people, and they were celebrating birthday or something with some ladies, and ladies generally are, I don't want to discriminate, but generally they are not into the most obscene extreme stuff.
There's a reason why the metal scene.
I'm curious. I want to explore that a bit.
So they were playing Guns N' Roses' "Sweet Child of Mine" for like 5th time, and Bao came in, and he was already drunk when he came here, and he was just very angry because everyone gets angry, and like you misclick, so you don't put the song in the queue, you just just play it in the middle of the other song, and it was like, oh, what the fuck is this? I just had my song in the queue, I was playing the fucking "Sweet Child of Mine" again.
But that's my favorite part of bars that allow us to do this. It's the conflicts that happen afterwards.
Yeah, it's like classic jukebox, fight.
But like, to go back to what you guys said, like, I've noticed this too. Like the few metal concerts that I've been to, it is of course mostly men. There are women, but of course it's quite obvious that it's not. There's not that many women there. Like you said that there's a reason.
Yeah, I just guess girls generally don't seek out this kind of like what's the new extreme, what's the most extreme, how far can I go? Just like my guess, like genetically, they just like want to find a safe space and thrive in it. They are not as adventurous in general, but of course, like
I mean, do you have many girlfriends
every girl
who
is
spend
like
their
that.
teenage years in girl groups, smoking joints and trying to run away from the police? No, you don't. But many boys who did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the boys are the ones who want to rebel more often.
Like, I'm trying to remember the scene in Bangalore. So of course, so we had some, female friends who were big into the scene also, but they were conspicuous by the fact that there were women who liked metal, and it was kind of like a badge of pride for them also. It's like, hey, we're one of the cool ones, and then stuff like that. So I've always been like curious, why?
Yeah, for sure. Like there is like a large community of girls and women in metal for sure, and especially lately, like I took a break from like seeking new music and with the metal scene in general after I accidentally deleted my whole music collection on a hard drive. Just kind of took out the wind out of me, and then I was moving and like grinding my career instead of like focusing on music. And then I came back to it, and now especially during COVID I was just like looking new bands, and there is so many bands with like ladies doing vocals or playing the instruments. Like you got the baby metal But the Love Bites, it's just like 5 girls, and they are playing like really heavy and sped up thrash metal, power metal, and bands like that, which is awesome. And it kind of worked always in Japan. Like Japan music scene, they never played the genre game like hey, if you listen to black metal, you cannot listen to grindcore for whatever reason. In Japan, they don't give a shit. It's like you are free to experiment with anything. So even the girls are more into it over there. And now it's like, since this music is not as offensive or extreme or perceived that way, more girls are finding the way into it. I was genuinely surprised how many girls are into metal nowadays.
Oh,
that's a great thing, actually.
Nice.
Actually, it's a great thing, period.
So it's like, what do you think is going to happen, going forward? Like, the venues obviously are not it's not something that we can look forward to anymore.
I'm pretty sure Mania gonna close, and we're gonna go back 10 years.
Yeah,
start all over again
for sure. But what I noticed, like I mentioned, I started to look up more music and get more involved with new metal. Nowadays, like Michele can confirm, like in order to play music and record music, you don't need expensive gear. You don't need expensive studio. You don't have to rent out the studio. You can just download bunch of stuff into your computer and buy yourself like little interface to plug your instruments into and record at home, and it has pretty decent quality. You can do the post-production mixing. So in 2020 now, there's so many new releases of new music because of this. Like a lot of bands, known and less known, and like completely new bands, they're just putting out so much music. It's actually insane. I'm not able to keep track with everything. So that's one upside, and I believe once people are able to go back to like see live music, they will be hungry for it.
Yeah, so I think that, especially now that because everything is online and, most bands now are doing like live streams and stuff like that, I would assume that any underground or less popular genre would flourish in that kind of environment, because now it's like you don't have the pressure of having to find people who wants to listen to your music. You don't have to look at venues. You can just simply
you got SoundCloud
online,
which works like Instagram. You make a record or like record a song, put some cool text in it, or like the text you want people to search up, and just put it out there, and you will get some people clicking on it, and it gets traction or not. But you don't need a label to print out spinning disc and distribute it to the public. You can just upload your stuff you recorded at home to a SoundCloud.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways it's kind of democratized, the sharing of music.
And you can do it to Spotify as well. There's like service, it costs like $5 a month or something, and you will give them your recorded music, and they will upload it to like Spotify, Tidal, and do like some basic Facebook social media promotion.
And you can get money out of it, right?
Yeah. And you are paying just for them putting it out there, and you are subscribed to their service, so they are not taking any cut from anything else, which is amazing. Like that's completely derailing the old school label model, which historically screwed up so many bands.
So
it was gatekeeping the music from people as well.
Now it's actually a great time to explore music. So like in terms of metal, if somebody wanted to get recommendations on, let's say, local metal bands, like what would you guys suggest?
You can just go to Spotify and search for playlists. That's like, I actually don't use it, but I keep getting like, hey, there's like Singapore extreme music playlist on Spotify, and there is a bunch of really good bands, including Wormrot and the other one, I forgot the name again. I'm shitty with the names.
So like I looked up a couple. So Wormrot, of course, is like on the top of the list because they have an international acclaim. There is it looks like marijuana, but it's like Marijana or something like that. It's pronounced like that.
I don't really remember the gig.
Yeah, so
we went together to see Caracal, didn't we? They're not really metal. They're more like bouldering hard rock. I think you were there at the gig, right? Caracal?
No, I wasn't there.
No.
I don't know.
At the Annex Studio.
Oh yeah, no, yes, of course, yeah. I was there.
Yeah. So they're kind of bordering on doom, sludge, hard rock.
Yeah, I love that.
But they're great. They're
okay.
Caracal.
There was another one. Caracal, yeah, that's the local one. There was Rudra, which keeps coming up, but I do not know if it's like a Singaporean band or an Indian one. It's because like, so Rudra tends to use a lot of Sanskrit chants and stuff like that. So
Oh, right.
yeah, so I'm like, okay, this is within the context of Singaporean metal, but I'm like, oh, wait, is it like an Indian band or is it like Singaporean band? Like, are they based here or can we like, listen to them?
You know what's the interesting thing about Singaporean metal scene? There is not that many of like the Chinese Singaporean doing it. It's always Indian, Malay, or Indonesian Singaporeans doing it. This thing I noticed. I don't want to say it's 100%, but like the majority of the band members and also the fans are not Chinese.
So
for whatever
what I
reason.
noticed is quite interesting is that if you look at the metal scene, you will have thrash and metal and black metal and those. Yes, you're right. And then there is another branch. That's where the Chinese are.
Okay, which branch is it?
It's progressive metal.
Oh, okay, shit. Oh,
and,
yeah.
and they
actually,
act
yeah,
on
you
a
are
different
right.
plane.
Yeah, okay.
They are much closer to other kind of events. Not more mainstream, but they don't play in those venues. It's a different circuit. So you look
You
at
are actually right.
progressive metal, post-hardcore, math rock. That's where they are.
Yeah.
But like,
okay.
what's the separation? Like, what?
Oh, it's a very different kind of music.
Because that's
Okay.
music for musicians. They don't care about
Very
political
technical.
message or gimmicks or whatever. They
Very
just want to
instrumental.
play with the tone of the guitars or their instruments and like do some crazy riffs and like purposely being difficult to play. It's just like music nerds, if I can use that word.
It's a lot of
Well,
virtuosity.
yeah.
Like, you
It's-
want to
it's
show some.
yeah. There's different motivation
technical
behind the
skills.
music completely, I would say.
Oh, okay. So, and on the other side,
But you are
that's
right.
not there. There's
Gent, prog, all of that is.
yeah.
But funny enough, it's always a bit of a different scene, even in Europe.
Yeah.
But here it's really separate. Like people I see at a prog metal gig, I can't recognize anyone from the I said death metal gig. Whereas in Europe, there is a fairly big overlap.
Yeah.
I mean, you have people who are gonna go and watch, Cannibal Corpse, and then are gonna go to watch, Periphery. Okay,
Yeah.
here there is very little overlap.
That's true. Yeah, that's like like since I never played an instrument until like picked up guitar now in the circuit breaker period, that's kind of side of the metal or music that never really like appealed to me because I didn't understand it. It's just not. It's I would say like the brutal death metal or black metal is like pop. Compared to like this prog metal and rock.
It is big and interesting enough.
Because death metal or black metal very simple beats and riffs.
But
So
if you look at progressive,
it's,
it's somehow getting. I mean, look, when I was, let's say, 16, 17, I was listening to. You always start with a bit of kind of heavy power. I quickly got into prog metal, a bit of death metal as well, and prog was always a kind of music that honestly it was the most uncool kind of metal you could listen to. All right,
yeah.
it's not cool to listen to that.
Because if you don't know anything about music,
Right.
you just don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, no, but it's not something that you brag about listening
Yeah.
to. Like, what do you like? What do you like to listen to? You're not going to talk about
Yeah,
prog
yeah.
metal. You're going to say, "But to Slayer," right? But today this has changed. I feel that I see many kids who
because
listen
making
to,
music became way more accessible.
They're listening to Periphery, of course,
Yeah.
is huge, but all the scene around it. You can say I listen to Animals Leader, and that's like, yeah, you're cool. I mean,
Because we were talking
It
about
wasn't
this.
like that
We were
before.
talking about this last time over the beer. That like the music instruments and making music became so much more accessible compared to even 10 years ago. So now everyone can buy really cheap guitar or secondhand guitar and an amp and just start playing at home,
Yeah.
or just download software and just use your like actual keyboard for the computer and just start making beats and
and
whatnot.
the technical level of metal has skyrocketed. You see what I mean, I'm a guitarist. You see what guitarists do today compared to 20 years ago. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, because I remember
In
when
what sense? Like, what's changed? Like,
the technical quality.
oh, okay.
Because like
Yeah.
if you like go back 15 years ago when I wanted to start or like was in a band, we couldn't afford the instruments themselves or like
Right.
the amps and the cabinets for guitars. We had to like rent a space and we were like, I don't know, 17, and we didn't have any money.
The bar is very high.
So
I mean, for guitarists, it's always been hard because everybody wants to be a guitarist.
yeah,
But you know, if you had a bit of groove, you could play a couple of solos, you would get in the band. Now you want to get in the band. There's 5 people who can play Dream Theater discography back to back, flawless.
yeah.
And auditioning for that band. So there's no space for you. It's extremely competitive.
Yeah, and
so many people have amazing skills.
Yeah, and also you get like, you know, the ultimate tap or guitar tap, or what the site called. I'll keep going back to guitars because that's what I'm familiar with since I picked it up recently. Like you can just go and look up any song and it will give you like interactive tabs, and you can like slow it down, speed it up, because like at the first go you are not able to actually play it at the same speed, so you have to slow it down. So you try to, you know, figure out how to play it, and you are speeding it up. 15 years ago there was nothing like that. You just had the record at home or like in your MP3 player on a CD, and just shit, how did fucking do that? And now you can even play a video of the guys playing it, and you can see what the hands are doing. It's just that like, you know, since you are able to learn way faster and get up to that level, it's like increasing the quality of the music.
And that pushed a lot more people to a very high level of musicianship, at least not musicianship but technicality. They are many people can be very fast and very accurate with their hands. It doesn't mean they can write songs, you know, it doesn't mean they can have a good taste, but it means that the baseline is very, very high. And that means that the new bands can do a lot of really cool things that the old bands can't. But B, what I find quite interesting is that we're probably over the phase where, if you look at 90s metal, you had some virtuosos who really stood out. Like, whoa, these guys can play way better than everybody else. Now, everyone's level is so high that you probably have to differentiate on something else, because you're not going to be that much better than the average guy.
You get like the
because everyone is so good.
Polyphia, Animals and
Polyphia, Scale the Summit, all those guys.
They just so play stuff that's like completely alien to what classical electric guitar music is supposed to be. It's just like, what the fuck is happening? And it sounds great. Like on the first listen, it's something new, but at the same time, it makes like musically sense. That is like, holy shit, this is good. I like the chord progression, whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that like among the YouTube artists, right? The ones who get like super viral and stuff. So it's like there are some riffs that are generally widely considered to be like really hard to do, and then literally 2 weeks later, there's a 12-year-old kid who's like fucking doing it.
Yeah.
So,
but I like it because it means that it's no longer about being able to play fast, because playing fast will become so overrated. It's already becoming overrated because a 12-year-old kid can do it. So what's special about it? So, you know, we gotta
talking
else.
About the Indonesian little girls playing Slayer riffs at the speed, which is very fast, and they're like 14 years old. So like, where do you go from there?
You go into a place where hopefully you start writing songs that are 5 minutes of chugging, but you try to put something more interesting in it. I mean, that's what I'm looking for in the next 5 years.
I'm stuck at mindless chugging, and I'm still loving it.
What's chugging?
I was just like repeating like palm muted riffs.
Okay.
There doesn't really much to
kind
it.
Of very, very low range frequency. A rhythm that is.
Just play the E string, the low E string, and just play 0 0 1 0 0 1.
And that like for 12 minutes.
Yeah, for the whole song. Yeah.
Okay.
Just palm mute or not.
A lot of this kind of music can be very redundant. You know, not very interesting.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to.
Of course, if there's like enough people doing it, you know, out of 100, there'd be one person.
Exactly.
That's one thing I wanted to bring out. Like my beef with metal fans, some of them, it's like they think that metal music is so complicated and also on like level with like symphonies and whatnot. It's like, no, some of it, of course, but like just really listen to it, like take a time or like pull up the tablature for the music itself. It's fucking simple.
Yeah, but it goes back to what Michele was saying about virtuosity, right? Like
that's like the progressive metal.
It's a very small part of the scene,
right?
Yeah. And in general, most kinds of metal require you to have I wouldn't say technicality, but you have to be fast and accurate enough with your fingers. But that's it. It's mechanics. It's like going to the gym. You will keep lifting. You will lift something heavier. All right. If you work on your metronome for long enough and you lock yourself up in the room, which is what 90% of those YouTube guitarists are doing, you lock yourself up in your room and you practice on the metronome at 70, 80, 90, 100, and then you get to 200, you will get there.
Yeah,
it's only a matter of time and dedication. Now, what not everybody has is, a good ear, some taste for arrangement, for composition. That's different.
Yeah, that's why most
metal is just about putting enough time and effort to play the notes right.
Yeah, most of the guys who pick up guitar, including myself, just end up as a rhythm guitarist. Just play the rhythm, and the guy who actually is gifted and put the effort and thinks about the music and actually writes the music most of the time. There's the lead guitarist and like putting out the solos in the middle of the songs and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean,
and for example, even the solos in metal are very seldom improvised. If you go to a jazz gig, they will never play the same solo twice. In metal, solos are typically written.
But so I thought that was the appeal of the solo, which is it's often...
And you play it note by note again and again and again every time.
Really? Is that how it works? Because I thought the reason why everybody goes wild over a solo is that, it's like, he's improvising.
Yeah, you got two kinds of bands. I think in general, not only in metal, one is like, okay, we came up with catchy riff or whatnot and it's just like overplay it and put it in multiple songs or just like root basis of it and make the whole album about it and then just repeat it on the stage. But then you got some really insanely gifted bands who just start the song and the solo every time is different and
what kind of band are you thinking about?
Shit. I struggle with the names
because most of the bands I listen to, they tend to play stuff note by note. If you go in heavy metal, power metal, death metal, fairly mainstream
ironically
genres.
Band that came to my mind, which is not metal band, is Bandmate. They are like a hard rock band. They do that. Their main focus in general is to play live, and they are so used to play live and so used to be with each other that they just can't afford that level of musicianship that they have dedicated segments within the songs. It's like, okay, we are going to little improvise here. The basis is still same, but hey, each member has room for the solo. Whereas on the record, there is no solo, for example. It's okay, let's solo a little bit here.
Yeah. But in my experience, that's pretty marginal. I guess it's just maybe the stuff I listen to.
The thing is, I'm mostly in death metal grindcore bands.
Now, the thing maybe we can talk about.
No room for solos in general.
Particularly in extreme metal is, I don't know about you, but the one thing I don't like about the scene in general is that very often I am very disappointed at the live performances of bands.
Oh yeah, that's actually true.
There are many bands who are actually not great musicians, but they have good songs. They have good songs. They put all they have in an album. You buy the record. It's awesome. You love it. It's well produced. It's well played. And then you go to the gig and it's just not good.
Yeah, you need to get drunk to enjoy it.
Either they don't have the technical ability to actually play what's on the record, and so this is a bit off, or the sound is just not as punchy or powerful, or it's not what you're looking for.
Yeah, it comes to the speed because most of the musicians, from what I gather, is in the metal life cycle, you just start training your speed as soon as you can, so you can start playing all these riffs that sound good only because they are played fast, which translates to we actually didn't even learn how chords work.
Yeah, but could it also be the venues do not understand the acoustics needed for?
No, it's just in venues. No. But maybe what you could argue is that many metal bands cannot afford the best mixers and sound engineers. That's possible. But even big bands, sometimes you go in it's not good.
Yeah, that's actually true. Yeah, but at the same time, you got exceptions. it just
that's when you start moshing and you don't care what's anymore.
But it just speaks to like it's every other aspect of like human activity. You got people, you can basically learn everything as a human, even if you are not particularly gifted in that area. If you put enough time into it, you can learn to do it above average and even like be successful in it. But it doesn't mean you are at the same level as like the celebrated prodigies who are doing it.
Yeah, that's to be expected.
Yeah, of course.
Right? It's just, you just keep going until you get there.
So like my main beef with like the pop mainstream music is that you got so many gifted prodigies who just like got into the grinder of the business of it. There's like they genuinely want to make good music, but they are forced because there is so many other people depending on what they are doing, business and money wise and livelihood wise. They are just have to play it safe. And
but isn't that the same case for like big metal bands anyway? Like they also have the same business pressures.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Like
it happens for sure.
The big metal bands, I mean.
Well, there is big
because
precedent with Metallica, because when they started doing something else that they were already doing, everyone fucking hated it.
Yeah, but it's still different, because if you look at let's say a big extreme opposite, you take a big K-pop act.
Yeah,
a K-pop act is literally owned by Big Hit, the Korean firm. So they are employees of a corporation.
Yeah.
So they have to make sure that they toe the line.
Right, but
if you look at someone like Metallica, it's quite the opposite. They made a name big enough that they literally don't care anymore. So
do they though? Like
no, they don't. I mean, of course, what you see with these bands is that nobody likes. Let's say when you're 40. You don't want to play the riff you wrote when you were 18.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's very frustrating. And it's many bands in interviews that say that. So you're getting close to your 40s, and you wrote a bunch of really cool songs last year, and you bring it on tour. And when you play them, the audience is like, meh. And then you play that one shitty riff you wrote when you were 18. It sucks, and the crowd goes mental.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because
and this is the life of most bands. Because you start hating the stuff you wrote at the beginning, but that's why people are listening to you, because all that stuff.
Yeah, because that's why you got the many nostalgia
bands.
Factor, man.
That's why you got many bands who refuse to play old material. They're like, nope, we're not playing the songs anymore. I mean, if you go to a Radiohead gig, I'm not sure they're gonna play Creep. They're like, fuck that shit.
Wow.
I'm not playing it anymore. Because they're sick of it.
I would expect to listen to that.
If I look at someone like Metallica, I would think that they have played those songs so many times that they just needed a break.
When I was on the Aura Noir gig here, like I was looking forward to my favorite song, Conqueror, from them, and like through the half of the set, people was like, "Hey, when are you going to play the Conqueror?" Like, yeah, we are not playing Conqueror anymore because we wrote it like 30 years ago, and we are now old fucks, and we are not able to play as fast.
Yeah, or we just don't like it anymore because that's not us anymore.
Yeah.
But I guess, I mean, if you're that big enough, you get to have a say in that, right? But, okay, maybe.
No, you get to have a say, but these are your fans. That's what they like. What you're gonna do.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna give your fans what they like.
It depends on your relationship with the fan base.
Yeah.
If you are playing for the fans, or you are like want to play what you want, and you have fan base large enough that you don't give a shit about losing revenue or whatnot, it's like, okay, we are sick and tired of this shit. This is what are we playing now. You like it or hate it, we don't care.
Yeah.
And there are like people who is like, okay, they have integrity, we like that, and therefore like
so
the new
the
stuff.
Hook. So they're like, they don't give a shit.
That's like the fan mentality, which is like really weird.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way for K-pop, at least.
Yeah, because K-pop is not old enough, or like actually is, but like it became popular very recently, so the fan base is not old enough.
Do you have any recommendations for someone who wants to know more about the metal scene in Singapore? Wormrot is one.
I guess networking, look at Facebook. As I said, you got the on Spotify, you can search like specific Singapore extreme music playlist. That's a good start. And like those bands are active on Facebook, so you can reach out to them over there. And they are all small bands, so chances are they will reply.
Right.
You can get involved.
And if you forget a second about COVID, okay, forget about COVID for a second. But there are at least 2-3 times a year some nice events where 6, 7, 8 local bands are going to play back to back. Funny thing, last year it happened the same day as the Opeth gig. So you know how do people on Opeth, but at the same time you had, I think it was Metal World United, which is a kind of a global event where every participating city in the world organizes as like a mini festival with a bunch of local bands, which is really cool. This happens once a year. There's a few other gigs where whenever there's a big name coming, they get 4 or 5 local bands to come as supporting acts. So the point is, if you're going to a gig of a medium-sized foreign band, like when you go to watch, people like Benighted or stuff like that, there are always opening bands, and your gig might be at 8 p.m., but the opening bands start at 2 or 3 p.m.
Yeah.
All right, because they just play, and from 2 to 5, it's 16-year-old kids with their parents in the audience. Well, just go and check them out.
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
don't like,
Sure.
you just step out, have a beer, and you come back in for the next band. And I think that's the best and probably the only way to actually get exposure to those bands.
Yeah.
You see them playing, you go to the event, you support the scene.
That's how it should be at the same time, right? That's the life. This is the organic life cycle
and
of
at least
you
support
bands.
them a tiny bit, because you buy your pass
Yeah,
for the event.
Yeah.
There's a nice headliner, and hopefully those smaller bands can make a little bit out of it.
Yeah.
If you like their stuff, just buy a T-shirt and try to support them.
Will do.
Yeah,
will
like
do.
the only way how to grow the scene is support the young bands. So go out, see those, buy their shit, whatever it's T-shirts, CDs.
Yeah, CDs.
Or just listen to them on Spotify. They got a few cents out of that, or like at least they got the numbers out, so they can like, hey, we got some numbers. Can we make a deal with
I think
you? Or
the best way to support a band nowadays is with merch. Like merchandise is probably the best way to show that, hey,
I think merch and the numbers of like the.
So Tomas, Michele, thank you so much for being part of this.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, hopefully after COVID, we actually get to go and see a metal gig.
Break some ribs in the mosh pit.
Until that happy day.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. And everyone who's listening, this was Living It Up in Lion City.